Welcome to BL Stories, where romance, drama, and unforgettable boys' love come to life. Love knows no limits, and the best stories aren't always straight. Subscribe now and join our growing BL-loving family. Chapter 13. Are you serious? Nolan asks, a proud smile spreading across his face. Xander ducks his head bashfully and nods. Yeah, okay? Just don't make a huge deal out of it. Nolan's grin widens. How could I not? Xander, you never study. I'm really proud of you. He leans in and gives Xander a quick, one-armed hug. Xander stiffens for a moment, then relaxes and smiles. He's relieved things aren't as awkward between them as he'd feared. All right, get off me, creep, he jokes as he shuts his locker. We should get to first period before we're late. Heaven forbid you get in trouble. Nolan laughs and gives him a playful shove before heading toward the stairs. Xander! Both boys turn at the sound of the voice. Ava is walking down the hallway toward them. She's wearing a gray cardigan over a white tank top, black leggings, and her hair is pulled into a messy bun. So much for hiding today, Xander thinks. He barely ever runs into her before lunch, yet of course today has to be different. Sometimes it feels like the universe is messing with him on purpose. She smiles brightly as she reaches them, stopping beside Xander. Hey, she says softly, twirling a strand of her hair. Hey, Ava, Xander replies with a small smile. He does enjoy her company. She's his friend, but the expectations that come with it make him uneasy. So, I was wondering if you wanted to hang out after school, she says. Maybe at my place this time? She reaches for his hand, lacing her fingers with his. Oh, I would, but I'm already hanging out with Nolan today. Maybe this weekend? It's not exactly true, but Xander knows Nolan would back him up without question. Ava looks disappointed but nods. Maybe this weekend, then. She smiles again. I'll see you at lunch. She gives him a quick kiss on the cheek before heading down the hall. Xander exhales and glances at Nolan. I can come over today, right? Nolan grins immediately. Yeah, of course. He feels a little too happy about it, but he can't help himself. His thoughts drift, again, to that moment they shared before, the closeness, the confusion. He spent more than a few late nights replaying it, wondering if it meant something more. He knows most guys don't think this way about their best friend, but maybe he's not like most guys. And maybe, just maybe, Xander isn't either. By the time 8th period rolls around, Xander feels surprisingly confident. He actually studied for this test, more than he ever has before. Good afternoon, Xander, Mr. Mack says with a friendly smile. Xander nods and takes his usual seat in the back. The bell rings, and tests are passed out one by one. Good luck, Mr. Mack says quietly as he sets the paper on Xander's desk. Thanks, Xander mutters. The first question is easy. Basic algebra. Something he's always been good at. He remembers qualifying for honors math years ago, before his parents stopped paying attention to things like permission slips. He works through the test methodically, pausing only briefly when he reaches the graphing section. After a moment of thought, everything clicks into place. Before he knows it, he's finished. 22 minutes. He walks to the front and slides the test into the tray. Mr. Mack raises an eyebrow, smiling. I'm guessing someone studied. Xander shrugs, embarrassed. It wasn't that hard. I already knew most of it. For once, he feels proud of himself, about school, of all things. It's a strange but welcome feeling. When the final bell rings, Xander grabs his skateboard from his locker. So, Nolan asks, how'd it goes? Xander grins. Honestly? I think I crushed it. That's awesome, Nolan says. We should celebrate. Video games and junk food. Xander laughs. Lead the way. The smell of freshly baked cookies greets them as they step inside Nolan's house. Hey boys, Mrs. Johnson calls from the kitchen. How was school? Good, Nolan replies. You? Busy, but I'm making chocolate chip cookies. They'll be ready soon. Best news I've heard all day, Xander says with a grin. Upstairs, Nolan's room feels as comforting as ever, The glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling, the galaxy-themed bedding. Xander sinks back onto the pillows, feeling safer here than he ever does at home. They argue playfully over which game to play, nudging shoulders and laughing. Nolan sits close, their arms brushing. He doesn't pull away. Then Xander's phone buzzes. "What's up?" he answers. "Xander," Ray says, her voice trembling. "Stay where you are. Beckett's coming to get you." "What? Why?" Xander asks, his heart racing. "It's Mom," Ray says quietly. "She's in the hospital." The words hit hard. After the call ends, Nolan pulls Xander into a hug without hesitation. "I'm so sorry," he whispers. "I have to go," Xander says, wiping his eyes. "I'm here. Just text me," Nolan replies. Later, Xander sits in the back seat of the car, his youngest brother pressed against him, crying softly. "Mommy's sick," Theo whispers. Xander wraps his arms around him, closing his eyes. "She's going to be okay," he says gently. "I promise." Chapter 14. The ride to the hospital was one of the hardest Xander had ever endured. The car stayed silent the entire way, broken only by Theo's quiet sobs. Xander held his little brother close, Theo's face pressed into his shirt. By the time they finally parked, Xander's shoulder was damp with tears. He'd done everything he could to keep his own emotions under control for Theo's sake, and so far, he was managing. But when Beckett turned off the engine and they all stepped out of the car, the weight of it all settled heavily on his chest. "Hands?" Theo asked softly, holding one out. Xander forced a small smile and took it. As they walked inside, Xander couldn't help hoping Theo didn't fully understand what was happening. He was still so young. Too young to lose his sense of safety the way the rest of them had. "Sit here," Beckett said. "I'm going to ask what's going on." Xander wanted to insist on going with him, but he didn't want to add more tension. He nodded instead and sat down with the others. "Do you think she'll be okay?" he asked Ray quietly. She shrugged. Her mascara was streaked, clearly ruined by tears. "I really hope so." Theo sniffled and looked up at her with wide, red eyes. "Mommy has to be okay. I don't want her to leave us." Ray pulled him into a hug. "She's going to be okay, Theo. I promise." Even as she said it, none of them truly knew if it was true. This wasn't the first time they'd been here. Xander remembered being pulled out of school years ago, only to learn their mom had been rushed to the hospital after nearly choking in her sleep. The fear came rushing back just as strong now. Beckett returned and sat beside Jeremy. "They're treating her now," he said quietly. "She hasn't woken up yet, and she's not stable. They don't know what's going to happen." Despite everything, her anger, her mistakes, Lauren loved her kids. And they loved her. She apologized when she messed up, even when it happened too often. As flawed as she was, she had still been there for them more than their father ever had. "She's going to die?" Theo whispered. "No," Beckett said gently. "She's going to be okay. Try to get some rest, buddy. We'll wake you up when we can see her." Theo hesitated, then nodded and rested his head on Ray's shoulder. Xander leaned closer to Beckett. "Do you really think she'll be okay?" "I don't know," Beckett admitted. "But I don't think she'd ever leave you on purpose." Xander pulled out his phone and texted Nolan. "Xander, 5:25. They're treating her now. We're in the waiting room." Nolan, 5:25. "I'm really sorry, Xander. I hope she's okay. Let me know if you need anything. I can grab your homework or come by if you want." Xander, 5:27. "Thanks. I'll keep you updated." The support meant more than Nolan knew. Beckett noticed the phone. "Nolan?" Xander nodded, a faint blush creeping in. Beckett wrapped an arm around him. "You holding up?" "I think so," Xander said quietly. He wasn't sure it was true. "I'm scared," Xander whispered. "I don't want to lose her." "Me neither," Beckett admitted. "But she's strong." Xander nodded and closed his eyes. Sleep didn't come. His mind drifted instead to memories of his mom comforting him after school, brushing his hair back, telling him everything would be okay. After hours that felt endless, a nurse approached. "Are you Lauren Valentine's family?" "Yes," Beckett said, standing. "She's awake," the nurse said gently. She's still tired, but she can have visitors. Relief flooded through Xander as they followed her down the hallway. Lauren lay in the hospital bed, pale and exhausted. "Mom," Xander whispered. Her eyes opened. "Xander, come here." They gathered around her, Theo clinging tightly. "I was so scared," Theo said. "I'm so sorry," Lauren murmured. "I never meant to scare you." Xander swallowed hard. "You didn't mean to, right?" "No," she said firmly. "I made a mistake. But I'm going to do better." He wanted to believe her. "I still need you," Xander said softly. Tears slipped down her cheeks as she pulled him close. "I'm going to try," she promised. They stayed together all night, talking, watching TV, refusing to leave her side. Around 2 in the morning, Xander sent one last message. "Xander, 2:42. My mom's okay. I won't be at school tomorrow. See you soon." He tucked his phone away and finally let himself rest, surrounded by family, hoping this time really would be different. Chapter 15. Xander woke the next morning to the gentle feeling of someone running their fingers through his hair. A small smile formed as he opened his eyes. He was still in his mom's hospital bed. Lauren was awake beside him, brushing his hair back while Theo slept peacefully between them. The rest of the room was quiet and empty. "Where did everyone go?" Xander murmured, his voice heavy with sleep. "Beckett had work and Jeremy and Ray went to school," Lauren said softly. "I told them to let you and Theo sleep. I wanted to spend the day with my last 2 babies." Xander had always loved his mom deeply, more openly than the others, aside from Theo. While his siblings often saw her only as someone struggling with addiction, Xander still saw his mother. To him, she wasn't weak or careless. She was sick, and she deserved help, not shame. He sat up slowly, rubbing his tired eyes. His hair stuck out in every direction, and the lack of sleep showed clearly on his face. "Do you think you'll get to come home today?" Lauren shrugged. "If everything stays stable, probably this evening. You'll need to text Beckett so he can pick us up." Xander nodded and checked his phone. 3 unread messages, all from Nolan. Nolan, 6:09. "I'm really glad she's okay." Nolan, 6:30. "I'll grab your homework today and bring it by after school." Nolan, 9:16. "First hour was boring without you. Miss you." Xander smiled and slipped his phone away. "Do you want anything? Water? Coffee?" "No," Lauren said. "I just want to sit here and talk with you. We don't do that very often anymore." "When did we ever do it often?" Xander teased gently. She smiled, though it didn't quite reach her eyes. "I guess you're right. I haven't been a very good mom, have I?" Xander shook his head quickly. "That's not what I meant." "I know," she said quietly. "But I know I've messed up. I've made choices that hurt you all, and I'm so sorry." Xander lay back beside her. "Mom, I'm not angry. You're trying and that matters. I just want you to get better. I miss when we used to spend time together." Tears filled her eyes. "I miss that too. I promise I'm going to try harder this time, even if it means getting real help." Xander nodded. He wanted to believe her, but this time he needed to see it. They spent the rest of the day together, watching TV, sharing cafeteria food, and enjoying the quiet moments. By evening, Lauren was cleared to leave. The family helped her home, settled her into bed, and Xander made her soup before collapsing onto the couch. Not long after, there was a knock at the door. Nolan stood outside, bundled in a scarf, holding a red folder. "Hey, I brought your homework." "Thanks," Xander said, smiling. "You want to come in?" Nolan nodded and followed him inside, greeting Ray and Jeremy before Xander led him down the hallway. Once inside Xander's room, Nolan asked quietly, "How's your mom?" "She's better," Xander said. "Really tired but okay." "I'm glad," Nolan said. "I missed you today." They talked for a while, laughing about school and joking the way they always did. But eventually, the laughter faded into something quieter. Xander glanced at Nolan, his heart beating faster. "Hey, Nolan," he said. "Yeah. You said before that you thought you might be gay." Nolan nodded, staring at his hands. "Yeah. Do you still feel that way?" After a moment, Nolan looked up. "I do. It's scary, but yeah. Xander hesitated, then leaned forward and pressed a gentle kiss to Nolan's lips. It was brief, unsure, but real. Nolan froze for half a second, then relaxed, carefully returning it. When Xander pulled back, his face felt warm. I think I might feel the same way. Nolan let out a nervous laugh, cheeks flushed. I was kind of hoping you'd say that. So, Nolan said after a moment, does this mean you like me? Like, more than a friend? Xander nodded, rubbing the back of his neck. Yeah. I really do. Nolan smiled shyly. Me too. They sat quietly for a moment, the weight of it all settling in. We don't have to tell anyone, Nolan said softly. We can take things slow. Xander nodded. Yeah. We just have to be careful. I don't want anything bad to happen to you, Nolan said. Xander smiled faintly. Same here. And for the first time in a long while, despite everything else going on in his life, Xander felt hopeful. Chapter 16. Nolan had gone home around 8 the night before. Now it was Friday morning, and Xander found himself unusually nervous about seeing him again. He wasn't sure if what happened last night had been a mistake. Part of him felt certain it wasn't, but doubt still lingered. It was strange knowing Nolan shared his secret now. Xander had already told Beckett, but this felt different. Nolan knew about his feelings, his fears, and his identity. It made everything feel unreal, like he was stuck between a dream and something much scarier. Xander sighed softly as he pulled his Pop-Tart from the microwave and took a bite while lacing up his boots. He shrugged on his coat, grabbed his backpack, and headed outside. As usual, Nolan was waiting in front of his house. His cheeks were red from the cold, and a beanie covered his ears. Hey, Nolan said brightly. Hey, Xander replied, holding out the remaining half of his Pop-Tart. You want this? Nolan smiled and took it. Thanks. They started walking side by side. Their shoulders brushed occasionally, and every time their hands lightly touched, Xander felt a small rush of excitement. They'd walked together like this 100 times before, but now, everything felt different. The glances, the smiles, the closeness. It all felt new. I have Mr. Mac third hour, Nolan said. He passed our tests back yesterday. Xander's stomach tightened. He'd almost forgotten about the test. What did you get? A 90, Nolan replied casually. I didn't fully understand this unit. Xander rolled his eyes. To Nolan, not understanding meant not getting a perfect score. Do you think I could stop by his room before class? Xander asked. I need to turn in the homework you brought me. Yeah, Nolan said. Do you think you did well? Xander shrugged. I don't know. I'm used to failing. This time I actually tried, so that makes it scarier. Nolan smiled reassuringly and brushed his hand against Xander's on purpose. You're smart. You just don't see it. Xander smiled shyly at the ground. Hey, do you want to skip the lunchroom today? Maybe eat in one of the empty classrooms? That way we don't have to deal with anyone. Nolan grinned. That sounds perfect. Xander stopped by Mr. Mac's classroom before first period, nervously twisting his hat in his hands. Good morning, Xander, Mr. Mac said warmly. I heard you weren't here yesterday. I had someone pick up my work, Xander said, handing over the worksheet. I finished it last night. Mr. Mac nodded approvingly. And I'm guessing you're here about your test? Xander laughed nervously. Yeah, unless it's really bad. Mr. Mac pulled the paper from his folder. Depends. Do you think this is bad? Xander looked down. 97%. His eyes widened. I passed. Mr. Mac chuckled. You did more than pass. You earned the highest score across all my classes. Xander felt his chest swell with pride. Math seems to come naturally to you, Mr. Mac continued. If you keep this up, you could raise your grade significantly. I will, Xander said, grinning. Thank you. When Xander slid into his seat beside Nolan, Nolan asked eagerly, So? Xander shook his head. Not great. Nolan frowned, until Xander laughed and handed over the test. No way, Nolan said, beaming. Xander, this is incredible. He said it was the highest score, Xander admitted, smiling. I'm really proud of you, Nolan said sincerely. Xander felt his face warm. Hearing that meant more than he expected. For once, school didn't feel like a losing battle. Not gonna lie, Xander said quietly, it actually feels pretty good to do well. At lunch, they slipped into an empty classroom near the back of the school. Nolan had packed extra food just in case. Always thinking ahead, Xander said, smiling as he accepted the sandwich and snacks. Maybe we can start studying together, Nolan suggested. Xander laughed. You mean actually studying? Yes, Nolan said, smiling. Okay, Xander agreed. I'm in. Nolan leaned over and gave him a quick, nervous peck on the lips. It lasted only a second, but it was enough to make Xander's cheeks burn. I'm sorry, Nolan said quickly. That was probably risky. Xander chuckled and leaned in, returning the brief kiss. I liked it. And for the first time in a long while, Xander felt like things might finally be going right. Chapter 17. Xander came home from school that afternoon with a smile he couldn't seem to shake. As he stepped inside, he spotted Beckett already home, leaning near the window. Hey, Xander said. You're home early. Beckett shrugged. Finished a job faster than I expected. Beckett often stayed late at the auto shop, and it had always fascinated Xander. Fixing cars seemed like such an impressive skill. Xander loved building things and drawing, and for a long time he dreamed of becoming an architect. Eventually, though, his struggles in school had made that dream feel out of reach. Still smiling, Xander reached into his backpack and pulled out a folded paper. Guess what? Beckett raised an eyebrow. What? Remember that test I was studying for? Xander said. We got them back today. He handed the paper over. Beckett scanned it, and within seconds, a wide grin spread across his face. Xander, this is incredible. Congratulations, man, he said, ruffling his younger brother's hair. Xander smiled shyly. He loved moments like this, moments where Beckett looked proud of him. Thanks, Xander said, taking the test back. I got the highest score in the class. He hesitated, then asked, Is Mom in her room? I want to show her. Beckett nodded, and Xander headed down the hall. He gently pushed open his mom's bedroom door. Mom, he whispered. She murmured. The room was dim, with sunlight peeking through the blinds. She was wrapped in blankets, clearly resting. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to wake you, Xander said softly as he stepped inside. Lauren rolled onto her back and smiled tiredly. It's okay. I've been resting most of the day anyway. Xander sat on the edge of the bed. Are you feeling any better? She nodded. Still a little shaky, but I'm doing better. I was thinking today, I want to start painting again. I need something positive to focus on. Xander's face lit up. Before everything had changed, his mom used to paint all the time. She was incredibly talented, and she'd been the one who taught him how to draw. The kitchen table had once been covered with canvases and paint trays, and those memories felt warm and distant now. That would be amazing, Xander said. I still sketch sometimes. I could help you get back into it. Lauren smiled. I'd love that. Maybe we could start this weekend. We could even pick up some new supplies. Xander nodded eagerly. The last time they'd painted together, he'd been 9 years old. He still remembered the picture she'd painted of him on a swing, one that still hung crookedly in the living room. Despite everything, it remained there, a reminder of better days. That sounds perfect, Xander said. Nolan's birthday is coming up. I want to paint him something. Lauren smiled. I'm sure he'll love it. Xander set his backpack down. I'm going to make dinner tonight, he said suddenly. She looked surprised. You don't have to do that. I want to, Xander replied. It'll probably just be hot dogs and fries, but I can make enough for everyone. I'll even cut Theo's the way he likes. Lauren laughed softly and kissed the side of his head. That would help a lot. Thank you. I'll take care of it, Xander said. As he stood, Lauren rubbed her forehead. I think I'll stay in here a bit longer. I've had a headache. I'll grab you something, Xander said, heading to the bathroom. He returned with a glass of water and a pill. Has it been hurting all day? For most of it, she admitted. But resting helps. Well, let me know if you need anything else, he said. I'll start dinner. Thank you, sweetheart, she replied softly. Back in the kitchen, Beckett and Theo were in front of the TV. Theo sat on the floor, coloring animals in his book. I'm making hot dogs for dinner, Xander announced. Beckett glanced over. Need help? Xander shook his head, grabbing a pot from the cabinet. I've got it. That evening, they all sat down together to eat. It wasn't anything fancy, but it was warm and it was shared. It had been over a year since they'd all eaten together like this, and Xander realized just how much he'd missed it. For once, the house felt calm. And for now, that was enough. Chapter 18. Xander woke up the next morning around 11. He'd stayed up far too late the night before, nearly 4 in the morning. He and Nolan had been on FaceTime while playing Xbox from their separate houses. Nolan had fallen asleep sometime around 3, though Xander hadn't noticed right away. When he finally did, he smiled softly, ended the call, and sent Nolan a message before heading to bed. Thanks for falling asleep on me, loser. Talk to you tomorrow. Now, he found himself climbing into Beckett's truck while Lauren settled into the driver's seat. All right, she said, buckling in. What do we need? Paint, canvases, and brushes, Xander replied. Lauren had managed to gather about $40 from around her room, so they knew they had to be careful with what they bought. Xander had jokingly suggested cutting corners, but she'd quickly shut that idea down. And you're painting something for Nolan's birthday? She asked. Xander nodded, smiling. He was excited, but also nervous. He hoped the painting would be good enough, maybe even good enough to hang on Nolan's wall. Just imagining that made his chest feel warm. They soon arrived at the store, parking near the entrance. If we have extra money, you can pick out something else too, Lauren said. Xander noticed how different she'd been since being home more. She was calmer, kinder, more patient with all of them. It felt unfamiliar, but comforting. Thanks, Mom, Xander said, smiling. Inside the store, Lauren grabbed a cart, even though they didn't need much. She admitted it made her feel steadier. They stopped in front of the watercolor paints. Which set should we get? Xander asked, scanning the shelves. Lauren studied them carefully before picking one up. This one should work. It's affordable and has a good range of colors. Yeah, that sounds... Xander. He frowned slightly and turned toward the end of the aisle. Ava was walking toward him with her older sister. Hey, what are you doing here? Ava asked cheerfully, giving him a quick hug. Xander smiled politely. Just here with my mom. We're painting tonight. That's cool, Ava said. I'm here getting supplies for a school project. She paused. Hey, why weren't you at lunch yesterday? I had to stay after class to talk to a teacher, Xander replied. It wasn't the full truth, but it was easier. Oh, she said. Well, I missed you. I'll see you Monday. She gave him a quick kiss on the cheek before walking off with her sister. Xander felt his face warm and instinctively rubbed the spot. Lauren smiled knowingly. She really seems to like you. Is she your girlfriend? Xander's blush deepened. No, she's just a friend. Lauren raised an eyebrow. Are you sure? She seems sweet. She has a boyfriend, Xander said quickly. Lauren nodded, letting it go. All right, let's finish up and head home. They spent a little longer shopping, then checked out. On the way to the truck, they ran into Ava again, which only made Xander feel more uneasy. She really does like you, Lauren teased once they were in the car. You sure about that boyfriend? Xander sighed sharply. Can we just drop it? Lauren glanced at him, concern replacing her smile. Hey, what's wrong? Xander looked down at his hands. I feel bad. I don't want to lead her on. Well, you can just tell her you want to stay friends, Lauren said gently. It's not that simple, Xander replied quietly. I'm already in a relationship. Lauren smiled. You have a girlfriend? Xander swallowed hard. His heart raced as he finally said, It's actually a boyfriend. Lauren's smile didn't fade. If anything, it grew softer. All right then. What's his name? Xander blinked, surprised by her calm reaction. Nolan. We started dating a few days ago. Lauren nodded. That makes sense. You two have always been close. He's a good kid. Xander smiled shyly. Yeah. He really is. I'm glad you have someone like that, she said. It's good for you. Later, Xander told her about his algebra test and how well he'd done. That's amazing, Lauren said proudly. I'm so proud of you. For the first time, Xander really believed he could change things. His grades, his future. He even talked about studying more seriously, maybe working towards something bigger someday. When they got home, they spent hours painting together. By the time they finished, they were both tired and hungry. Xander lay on the couch, paint smudged on his hands, while his mom went to shower before making dinner. The front door opened and closed. Xander opened his eyes and sat up. His dad had come home. Hey, Xander said cautiously. Everything okay? Richard didn't answer right away, his expression tired and guarded. Xander frowned. You all right? Richard snapped back sharply, telling him to mind his business before heading down the hall and shutting his bedroom door. Xander stood there for a moment, heart pounding. The tension lingered in the air long after the door closed, but for now he stayed where he was, hoping the rest of the night would pass quietly. And hoping more than anything, that things could keep getting better. Chapter 19. Xander limped slightly as he walked down the street, his hands tucked deep into his pockets. After Lauren had finished her shower, she'd found him on the floor, shaken and hurt. She cried, apologizing over and over as she tried to help him clean up, but Xander had been too scared to stay in the house. She understood, better than anyone, how frightening her husband could be. Letting Xander leave felt like the safest option. Thankfully, Theo hadn't been home to see any of it. His siblings had taken him to a movie he'd been excited about, while Xander had stayed behind to paint with his mom. It had been one of the best afternoons he'd had in a long time. Now, that happiness felt distant, and he couldn't help wishing he'd gone to the movie instead. His hat was pulled low over his ears, his hearing aids still in place, though one sat crooked from his fall earlier. For a moment, he'd been afraid it had stopped working. After adjusting it, sound returned, and he let out a quiet breath of relief. Replacing it wouldn't have been possible right now. He was heading to Nolan's house. All he wanted was to see him, to feel safe, to sleep without fear. Nolan always had a way of calming him, of helping him forget, at least for a little while, about everything waiting for him at home. When he reached the house and knocked, the cold air stung his face. A moment later, the door opened, and Nolan's mom, Cindy, stood there. Her expression changed instantly when she saw him. "Oh my goodness," she said gently. "Come inside." Xander didn't answer her unspoken question. He simply nodded. She led him to the bathroom. "Let me help you clean up a bit. Nolan's upstairs resting." Xander followed quietly, knowing from experience that arguing with Cindy never worked, and that she was only trying to help. She knelt in front of him with a small first aid kit, her movements careful and practiced. "Was it your dad?" she asked softly. Xander hesitated, then nodded. "I shouldn't have pushed him," he murmured. "I just got scared." Cindy sighed, shaking her head gently. "None of this is your fault." After a moment, she added, "Why don't you stay the night here? You can go back when things settle down. We'll make pancakes in the morning." Xander swallowed. "Thank you, Miss J." When she finished, she sent him upstairs. Xander opened Nolan's door quietly and slipped inside. The room was dark, Nolan asleep beneath the blankets. Without overthinking it, Xander carefully climbed into the bed beside him. Nolan stirred, blinking awake. His sleepy smile faded slightly when he noticed Xander's face. "Hey," he whispered. "What happened?" Xander placed his hand over Nolan's. "It's okay. Your mom took care of it." Nolan didn't press. He just nodded and shifted closer. "I'm really tired," Xander murmured. "Your mom said I could stay. Is that all right?" "Of course," Nolan said softly, leaning in to press a gentle kiss to Xander's forehead. Xander closed his eyes, relaxing for the first time all night. Nolan's arm rested protectively around him, and soon, sleep came easily. When Xander woke a few hours later, Nolan was beside him, scrolling on his phone. "Hey," Nolan said. "Mom got pizza. Want to come down, or should I bring some up?" "I'll come down," Xander said, rubbing his eyes. Downstairs, The TV played quietly while Cindy and Nolan's brothers sat at the table. "Hey," Jackson said with a nod. Xander returned the greeting, grabbing plates and sitting beside Nolan. No one commented on his injuries, and he appreciated that more than they knew. After dinner, they headed back upstairs. "I'm honestly exhausted," Xander admitted. "Can we just watch something? Or we can just rest," Nolan offered. "I'll stay." "Please," Xander said quickly. "Don't leave." Nolan smiled softly. "I'm not going anywhere." They lay side by side, the room quiet. "I don't know how much longer I can do this," Xander whispered. Nolan listened carefully, then spoke gently. "I know things are hard, but you're not alone. You always have me." Xander nodded, his voice shaky. "Thank you. I don't say it enough, but you mean everything to me." Nolan smiled. "We've got each other. That's not changing." Xander leaned in, pressing a gentle kiss to Nolan's lips. It was soft, brief, and full of reassurance. "I really like you," Nolan said quietly. Xander smiled. "I really like you too." As they settled back into the pillows, Nolan felt certain of one thing. No matter how complicated the world became, he wasn't going anywhere. And neither was Xander. Chapter 20. The next morning, Xander ate breakfast with Nolan and his family before getting ready to head home. Nolan had offered, more than once, to let him stay the entire day and even spend another night so they could walk to school together in the morning, but Xander gently declined. As much as he wanted to stay, he knew he needed to go back. He pulled his hat down over his head and smiled at Nolan. "I'll see you tomorrow morning," he promised. Nolan nodded, returning the smile. "Just text me if you need anything." "I will," Xander said softly. "Bye, Nolan." "Bye." Xander took one last look back before stepping outside and walking down the front steps. His stomach twisted with nerves as he headed home. By now, his siblings were probably back, and even if they weren't, he needed to check on his mom. The thought of what might have happened while he was gone made his chest tighten. A small part of him hoped his dad hadn't come home at all, but he knew he was about to find out. When he unlocked the door and stepped inside, the house was quiet. It was only 9 in the morning, and most people were still asleep at that hour. As he moved farther in, he noticed his dad lying on the floor near the entryway, a tipped-over bottle nearby. Xander clenched his jaw, forcing himself to stay calm, and carefully stepped around him before heading down the hallway. He stopped when he reached his mom's room. Lauren was awake, sitting up in bed with a magazine resting in her hands. "Mom," Xander whispered. She looked up and his heart sank. She looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes, her face drawn with fatigue. And then he noticed the bruise near her eye. Guilt washed over him instantly. Leaving hadn't been easy, but seeing her like this made him feel like he should have stayed. She smiled faintly. "Hey, sweetie. Come here." Xander sat on the edge of the bed. "How are you?" he asked quietly. She shrugged. "I'm okay." Her tone said otherwise. Xander glanced toward the nightstand and noticed a bottle that hadn't been there before. His expression hardened slightly. "What's that?" Lauren sighed. "I didn't take anything," she said quickly. "I just thought about it for a moment. Things get overwhelming sometimes." Xander stood up without another word, picked up the bottle, and walked into the bathroom. A moment later, he returned and sat back down. "They're gone," he said firmly but gently. She nodded, her eyes soft. "Thank you." "Have you eaten?" he asked. She shook her head. "Not yet." "I can make something," he offered. Lauren smiled. "You're always taking care of everyone." Just then, Theo padded into the room, still in his dog-themed pajamas, thumb tucked into his mouth. "Hi, Mommy." "Hi, Xander," he said cheerfully, climbing onto the bed. Lauren brushed her fingers through his hair. "Did you sleep well?" Theo nodded eagerly. "Yeah. I dreamed we had a dog. A real one." She laughed softly. "Remember what I told you about dogs?" Theo pouted. "You said no dogs." Xander smiled and stood. "Hey, Theo. Want to help me make breakfast?" Theo's face lit up. "Yes. Pancakes." "Deal," Xander said. "But no eggs." Theo nodded enthusiastically. In the kitchen, Theo climbed onto the counter to grab the pancake mix. This one. That's it, Xander said. Careful getting down. I'm jumping, Theo announced. Before Xander could protest, Theo leapt, but Xander caught him easily. Theo giggled. You're fast. Xander laughed. You've got too much energy. They made pancakes together, adding chocolate chips just the way Theo liked. Xander didn't eat any himself, he'd already eaten earlier, but watching Theo happily stir the batter felt good. The rest of the day passed quietly. Xander relaxed on the couch with his siblings, enjoying the rare calm. His dad woke up later in the afternoon but didn't cause trouble, retreating back to his room soon after. Once he was gone, Lauren came out with a blanket and settled onto the couch with them. Hey, knock it off. Xander laughed as Jeremy pulled him into a playful headlock. Not until you apologize. Jeremy teased. Okay, I'm sorry, Xander said, laughing as Jeremy let him go. Theo looked up from his toys. What does that word mean? Everyone laughed nervously. Theodore, Lauren said gently, that's not a nice word. Jeremy winced. Sorry. Lauren sighed but smiled. Just be careful what you say around your brother. The rest of the evening, they stayed together in the living room, watching TV. It had been a long time since they'd spent a full day like this. No shouting, no tension, just quiet company. Xander leaned back against the couch, listening to Theo's laughter and the low hum of the television. Moments like this reminded him of how things used to be, and how he wished they could be again. He didn't think wanting to feel safe at home was too much to ask. He hoped that one day he wouldn't have to wish for it anymore. Chapter 21. Xander shook his head, chuckling quietly as they walked down the hallway. You are honestly the biggest dork I've ever met. I've never heard someone say they were excited for a test just because part of it is about planets and atmospheres. Nolan laughed, looking down at his shoes. Oh, whatever. Sorry, I actually enjoy something in school, grumpy, he teased. It was Monday morning, and normally Xander dreaded school with everything he had. But today felt different. He hadn't woken up irritated or exhausted like usual. For once, getting out of bed hadn't felt impossible. Part of it was Nolan, knowing he'd see him made everything feel lighter. And the other part was the decision he'd made to finally try. He was behind in his classes, and catching up wouldn't be easy, but he was ready to stop giving up on himself. Hey, Nolan, someone called out. Nolan frowned and turned just in time to be shoved lightly into the lockers. He winced, rubbing the back of his head. Hey, what was that for? He muttered. So, about that biology test today, the boy said. You're gonna help me out. Nolan stiffened. You mean cheat? He asked flatly. The boy was someone Nolan had never liked, constantly skipping work, bothering him in class, and sitting right behind him just to mess with him. Nolan had never mentioned it to Xander. He knew it would only lead to trouble. No way, Nolan continued. It's not my fault you didn't study. The boy shoved him again. Hey! Xander snapped. Before Nolan could react, Xander grabbed the back of the boy's shirt and pulled him away. Don't touch him, he said firmly. Xander knew he shouldn't jump in, but watching someone put their hands on Nolan made his blood boil. Nolan would stand up for himself with words, but when things got physical he never fought back, and Xander didn't understand why. The boy smirked. Wow, sorry. Didn't know you were so protective of your boyfriend. The words were meant as a joke, cruel and careless, but they hit hard. Xander didn't see why it was funny. Other kids dated openly all the time. Why should it matter that he and Nolan were both guys? Xander felt his anger spike, his face heating up, but Nolan noticed just in time. He grabbed Xander's elbow, grounding him before he could react. Don't, Nolan said quietly. It's not worth it. The boy laughed. Guess I hit a nerve. Xander clenched his jaw but didn't move. After a moment he nodded. Yeah, he muttered. Let's just go. Nolan let out a relieved breath as they walked away together. Thanks, Nolan said after a moment. But I didn't want you getting in trouble over that. Xander sighed. I know. I just hate seeing people mess with you. Nolan smiled slightly. I figured. You always want to protect everyone. Xander scoffed. He's lucky I walked away. Nolan shook his head with a fond grin. I know. By lunchtime, they decided to actually go to the cafeteria, even though Xander knew Ava might be there. Sure enough, she was. Xander sat beside Nolan at their usual table. Good timing, Xander said. Didn't really want to sit alone today. Nolan laughed and handed him a paper bag. I saved your seat. Ava and Wyatt joined them a moment later. Hey, Wyatt said casually. Hey, Xander replied. Ava smiled warmly at Xander. Hi. Hey, Ava, Xander said, returning the smile. So, how was your weekend? She asked. Pretty chill, Xander said. He avoided going into details, especially since the faint bruises on his face still hadn't fully faded. Ava noticed anyway. What happened? She asked, reaching out instinctively. Xander leaned back slightly. It's nothing. Before she could press further, Nolan spoke up. We were messing around at my place. He tripped and took a fall. Ava looked doubtful but nodded. You guys should be more careful. Yeah, Xander said with a forced laugh. Lesson learned. There was a pause before Ava spoke again, her voice quieter. I was wondering, would you want to go out this weekend? Xander froze. He swallowed hard. I can't. Oh, Ava said softly. Why not? I'm already in a relationship, he said. The table went quiet. You are? Wyatt asked. Since when? Xander rubbed the back of his neck. It's not important. She doesn't go here. Ava's smile faltered, and she pulled her hand away. Oh, I didn't know. Nolan stayed quiet, his heart racing, unsure what to say. Lunch after that was tense. Ava focused on her phone, Wyatt tried to keep things normal, and Xander barely touched his food. A part of him wished he'd been brave enough to tell the truth, but fear held him back. For now, all he could do was sit beside Nolan, close enough to feel steady, even if the rest of the world felt uncertain. Chapter 22. Nolan couldn't wipe the cheesy smile off his face as he stared down at his phone. Biology class was almost over, and since the test had been the day before, the teacher had spent the entire period introducing notes for the new unit. Nolan had tried to pay attention, but his thoughts kept drifting elsewhere. He and Xander had plans. Lunch at the diner, homework together, and just being around each other. Nolan couldn't wait. Xander, 104. You excited for our date tonight? Nolan, 105. Definitely. Maybe afterward we could go to my place and play Xbox? Nolan, the teacher snapped. What are you looking at? Nolan jumped, his face turning bright red as he looked up. Nothing, he said, and even he knew it sounded unconvincing. It seems like your phone is more important than class today, the teacher said sharply. If the conversation is so important, why don't you read the messages out loud? Nolan's eyes widened. He had seen this happen to other students before, and while most conversations were harmless, he knew his definitely wasn't something he could share. It's nothing, he said quickly. I'm putting it away. He reached for his backpack, but before he could, someone snatched the phone from his hand. Nolan gasped and looked up to see the same boy from the day before holding it, a smug grin on his face. That's okay, the boy said loudly. If you won't read them, I will. Stop. Give it back. Nolan yelled, reaching for it, but the boy shoved him away. The boy's grin widened as he read the screen. Oh wow. Looks like Nolan and Xander are dating. A few students nearby leaned closer, murmurs spreading across the room. That's enough, the teacher shouted. Everyone back to your seats, now. Nolan sank into his chair, his heart racing. His face burned, and his eyes stung as tears threatened to fall. He stared down at his desk, terrified, not just of the humiliation, but of what this meant for Xander. Their secret was out, and Nolan felt sick knowing he hadn't been able to protect it. The rest of the class dragged by painfully. Students whispered, stared, and laughed under their breath. Nolan barely heard the bell when it rang, but when it did, he bolted from his seat, grabbed his bag, and rushed into the hallway. Xander was waiting outside the school, smiling, until he saw Nolan's expression. Hey, what's wrong? Xander asked, his smile fading instantly. Nolan swallowed hard. Can we just walk? I want to get away from here. Xander nodded without hesitation and led him down the street. Did something happen in class? Nolan hesitated, then whispered, "Everyone knows." Xander stopped walking. "Knows what?" "About us," Nolan said quietly. "I was texting and a kid took my phone." He read it out loud. "I'm so sorry. Please don't be mad at me." Xander stared at the ground, his chest tight. Fear rushed through him, not anger. He had wanted this kept secret until he was older, until things were safer. Now that choice had been taken from him. "I'm not mad," Xander said finally, his voice shaky. "I'm just really scared." Nolan nodded, wiping his eyes. "Me too. I don't know how my family will react. I don't want anyone to hate me." Xander sighed and started walking again. He slipped an arm around Nolan's shoulders. "I don't think your mom will," he said gently. "She's always seemed kind." "I hope you're right," Nolan said softly. "We'll face this together," Xander said firmly. "Tomorrow, I'll be right there with you. Just, please don't get into a fight because of me," Nolan said, reaching for Xander's hand. "I don't want things to get worse." Xander exhaled slowly. "I'll try. I promise." He looked away for a moment. School was the one place that felt easier than home. Now it feels like I have to be afraid here too, and that's not fair. Nolan squeezed his hand. "I don't know everything you're dealing with," he said quietly, "but I know we're not alone in this. And fighting won't fix it. We just have to get through it, together." Xander gave a small smile. "No fighting. At least not tomorrow." "That's all I'm asking," Nolan said with a soft laugh. They ended up stopping at McDonald's anyway. Neither of them wanted to be around people, but hunger won out. They sat in a quiet booth with fries and burgers between them. "How fast do you think word will spread?" Xander asked. Nolan shrugged. "Probably by tomorrow." "Tomorrow's going to be rough," Xander muttered. "Yeah," Nolan agreed. "But we'll handle it." Xander smiled faintly. "At least we're doing it together." Neither of them knew what the next day would bring, and both were nervous to find out. But for now, they sat side by side, holding on to the comfort of not being alone. Chapter 23. After they had filled up on fries and burgers, Xander and Nolan headed back to Nolan's house. They had been too nervous to focus on homework at McDonald's, so now they planned to try again in the comfort of Nolan's living room. The only thing on their minds was Jackson. Neither was sure if he had heard the news yet, or how he would react if he had. "Well, let's hope Jackson hasn't heard yet," Nolan muttered, opening the front door. Inside, Jackson was sprawled on the couch, watching reruns of The Office. He glanced over and grinned. "Hey, what's up?" he asked. Nolan smiled timidly, eyes on his shoes. "Hey, Jack," he mumbled. Xander gave a small nod. "Sup," he said quietly. Jackson leaned back, shrugging. "Don't act all weird on me." "Yeah, heard. I know about you too, and honestly, I don't care. If anyone tries to give you trouble tomorrow, I'll make sure they don't get away with it." Nolan blinked in surprise. "Why, you don't care?" Jackson grinned and shook his head. "Of course not, kiddo." Nolan let out a shaky breath, rubbing his eyes as tears threatened to form. Xander noticed and draped an arm over his friend's shoulders. "I'm so nervous for school tomorrow," Nolan admitted. Jackson nodded, understanding more than he let on. "I don't know exactly what it's like to be bullied or scared," he said gently. "But I do know I want to be here for you. I'll help you however I can." Xander, too, felt protective. Though he wasn't family, Nolan was like a little brother to him. He spent so much time over at his house, and Xander couldn't imagine letting anyone hurt him. "Listen," Jackson said, moving closer to lean against the edge of the couch. "Tomorrow's going to be tough. Some kids might be mean, but it doesn't matter. You're happy together, right?" They nodded. "That's all that matters," Jackson continued. "High school can be rough, but it's not forever. Eventually, people won't be watching your every move. You'll get your space to breathe." Xander leaned over and whispered jokingly to Nolan, "Your brother's such a sap." Jackson laughed. "Hey, I'm just trying to help. My bad if it's too much," he said. Xander smiled. "I'm teasing." "Thanks, Jackson. I really mean it." I hide my nerves with sarcasm. Jackson patted him on the shoulder. Well, you two dorks know I've got your backs. Boys. Even you, Xander, even if you like to mess with me. They spent a little more time at Nolan's before tackling their homework. Xander managed to finish most of it before it was time to go home. A part of him dreaded it. He didn't know how the rest of his siblings would react to the news about him and Nolan. When he walked in the front door, Jeremy, Ray, and Theo were on the couch. Hey, Xander greeted. Theo's face lit up. Hi, Xander. Xander grinned, sitting down next to Jeremy. Where's Beckett? He's in the garage working on a car, Jeremy replied. Then, a little hesitantly, he asked, Hey, is there something you need to tell us? Xander let out a small sigh, hoping they hadn't found out yet. I know what you mean and I don't know how to explain, he said nervously. Jeremy shook his head. I just want to apologize. The times I made fun of you before, I didn't know, but that's no excuse. I'm really sorry. Ray nodded. Yeah. And none of us care that you're gay. We've talked it through and made sure Theo knows too. Xander blinked in surprise. You don't care at all? Jeremy smiled. Of course not. You're still our brother. Hot-headed, annoying, sure, but we could never hate you. Xander laughed softly, shaking his head. Honestly, I didn't think you'd care, Jeremy. Ray either really. I get it, Jeremy said. I know I act like an idiot sometimes. I'm sorry if I ever made you uncomfortable. I never meant to. I know, Xander said, smiling. No need for apologies. But don't get all sappy on me, okay? That's not what I want. Jeremy chuckled. Fair enough. Want to watch a movie or something? Sure, that's fine, Xander replied. Theo climbed onto the couch, leaning against him. Sissy says you have a boyfriend, Theo said with a grin. Do you? Xander blushed lightly. Yeah, I do. And she says it's Nolan. I like him. When he comes over, he always plays Legos with me. If you don't want him, maybe he can be my boyfriend. Xander laughed. No way, buddy. I still want him, he teased, pinching Theo's nose. Theo giggled and swatted his hand. I'm just saying. If you ever don't, tell me, okay? I promise, Xander said, smiling. You'll be the first to know. Theo nodded. But I won't tell Dad. I promise. Xander smiled warmly. Thanks, Theo. I love you, but I love all of you. Ray smiled. We love you too, Xander. Chapter 24. It hadn't even been a minute after they walked into school when they heard their first comment. Huh, a boy sneered. I never would have guessed you two were together. Xander clenched his fists and shot the kid a glare, but Nolan gently rested his hand on Xander's arm to calm him down. It's not worth it, he murmured, though his own face flushed with embarrassment. Xander let out a sigh and shook his head. You're impossible, he muttered under his breath as they continued down the hallway. Students whispered and stared at them, and Nolan could feel the heat creeping up his neck. He wished he could disappear. So, I told my mom about all of this, Nolan said quietly. Xander glanced at him. Yeah? What did she say? Nolan opened his locker and smiled faintly. She said she still loves me. She also said that you're a good boyfriend and that we make a cute couple. Xander blushed and looked down at his shoes. It was strange having so many people know about them. There were perks, sure, but plenty of downsides too. That's great, Nolan. I figured she'd be okay with it. Your mom's always been kind. I know she. Nolan's words were cut off as a boy suddenly shoved him into his locker. Move out of my way, the boy sneered. Xander stepped forward quickly. Hey, you don't ever touch him again. He grabbed the kid's shirt and shoved him against the lockers, but before he could get any more aggressive, a voice called out. Alexander, that's enough. Xander turned to see Mr. Mack approaching. He let go of the student and took a deep breath. You go to class. I'll deal with you later. Alexander, come talk with me first. The teacher led Xander back toward his classroom. Xander glanced back at Nolan. I'll meet you in first hour? Nolan nodded. Yeah, good luck. Inside the classroom, Mr. Mack leaned against the front desk. You're not in trouble, he said gently. I just wanted to check on you. I heard about what happened yesterday and wanted to make sure you were okay. Xander blinked in surprise. I'm fine, he muttered. Mr. Mack nodded. I know I'm just your teacher, but I've been through tough times too. High school can be rough, and feeling different is scary. But things get better. And if you ever need to talk about anything, you can come to me. Xander felt a lump in his throat. He hadn't expected such kindness, let alone that his teacher understood on a personal level. Thank you. I really appreciate it. I'm scared. I'm supposed to protect Nolan and make sure he's okay, but I don't always feel strong enough. No one is strong all the time, Mr. Mack said gently. It's okay to be afraid. Everyone is at some point. The 1-minute warning bell rang, and Xander nodded. Thanks. I should get to class. Have a good day, Mr. Mack said. I'll see you in 8th hour, but my door is always open if you need me before then. Xander offered a polite smile and left. Even though the bullies were still out there, it felt reassuring to know someone else was on their side. He found Nolan at his locker and slid into the seat beside him in 1st hour. Did you get in trouble? Nolan asked. Xander shook his head. No, surprisingly not. Mr. Mack just said he's here if I need to talk. I'm sure he'd do the same for you. Nolan smiled faintly. That's good. For a moment, I thought you were going to lose it on that kid. You looked so angry. Xander shrugged. I was. I promised not to fight back physically. I don't know why it's so hard to hold back sometimes. Nolan nodded knowingly. I get it. I've known you long enough to understand how you think. 1st hour passed without incident. A few students glanced their way, but no one harassed them, and they were grateful. 2nd hour was tougher. Some boys wouldn't leave Nolan alone. The teacher scolded them and sent one out, but the rest continued their whispers and pranks. By 3rd hour, a group of the popular kids kept making jokes, which made Nolan uncomfortable, though he mostly tuned them out. He focused on getting through each class until the lunch bell finally rang. Xander felt his nerves spike as they approached the lunchroom. He was especially anxious about seeing Ava. Sitting next to Nolan, he tried to keep his voice calm. Things okay so far? Nolan shrugged. I don't know, kids are just mean, he admitted. Xander nodded. I know, but it'll be all right. Give it a week, and no one will even remember. At that moment, Ava walked over and sat beside Xander. Hey guys, she said softly. Xander offered a small smile. Hey Ava. She returned the smile. I just wanted to apologize for being pushy. I should have realized you weren't interested. If I had known about you and Nolan, I wouldn't have flirted. I'm really happy for you too. Xander let out a relieved sigh. He had expected anger or jealousy, but Ava was supportive. Thanks, Ava. I really appreciate it. Wyatt sat down across from them. What's up, guys? Nolan smiled. Hey, Wyatt. The rest of lunch passed smoothly. Wyatt didn't bring up the situation again, showing respect for their privacy. Xander was grateful. Despite the challenges at school, he still had friends who accepted him and Nolan, and that made all the difference. Chapter 25. The first few weeks after everyone at school found out about their relationship had been rough. Kids whispered, made jokes, and called them names constantly. But slowly, after 3 long months, it seemed to finally die down. By now, no one paid them much attention. They didn't hold hands or kiss at school, but they didn't hide the fact that they were dating either. Neither of them was embarrassed. They refused to let fear control their happiness. It was cheesy to think about, but Xander realized that Nolan was the main source of genuine joy in his life. Nolan had always been there for him, and now, being together, that affection grew stronger. They were only 14, and their relationship was still young. They'd only shared a few makeout sessions, but neither of them was in a rush. They were just kids, learning together what it meant to care for someone. Ironically, being in a relationship had boosted Nolan's confidence. He had expected his self-esteem to collapse after being outed at school, but instead, he learned to stand up for himself. And once he did, the teasing stopped. For the first time, he felt free to be himself. It was mid-February, and the past few days had been surprisingly warm. Most of the snow had melted, and the temperature hovered around 55 degrees, perfect for Nolan's birthday. Nolan's mom and brother had helped Xander plan the surprise. Friday evening, Nolan was taken to his aunt's for a birthday dinner, giving Xander the chance to finish setting up. The backyard was small but cozy, enclosed by a chain-link fence. The porch, stripped of its winter furniture, had been transformed into a little theater for them. In the center, Xander had set up a small fireplace for warmth and discretion. Beside it, he arranged a pillow bed using patio cushions, blankets, and extra pillows to make it comfortable. A small table held snacks and drinks, along with Nolan's laptop, already logged in and ready for a movie. For decoration, Xander had strung up Christmas lights along the siding and placed balloons around the porch. The final touch was Nolan's gift, a large rectangular package wrapped in galaxy-themed paper, a little messy from Xander's first attempt at wrapping, but done with care. When Nolan's car pulled up, Xander lit the fire and took a deep breath. He was nervous. What if Nolan didn't like any of it? Nolan stepped through the sliding door, and his jaw nearly dropped. His eyes scanned the backyard setup, taking it all in. "Xander, you didn't have to do all this," he said, astonished. Xander smiled shyly. "I wanted to make it special, and I got you a gift too." He handed over the neatly wrapped package. Nolan took it, grinning. "You really didn't have to. Just open it," Xander urged. They sat on the pillow bed, and Nolan tore into the wrapping. Inside was a canvas painting Xander had made himself, a starry sky with Earth in the corner, complete with the Orion constellation. Xander had spent 6 hours on it, nervous it wouldn't be good enough. "Xander, it's amazing," Nolan said softly. "If you don't like it, I could get you something else," Xander offered nervously. Nolan shook his head quickly. "No way. I love it. You made this for me?" Xander nodded. "Yeah, 6 hours today. I was worried you wouldn't like it." "I love it," Nolan repeated, leaning over to kiss Xander softly. Being able to call him his boyfriend still felt surreal, but in the best way. Everything had changed, but Xander didn't mind at all. "Do you know where it's going?" Nolan asked, setting the painting carefully down. "Where?" "Above my bed on my wall. That way everyone can see it." "Everyone? Isn't it just me that comes over?" Xander teased. Nolan laughed. "You know what I mean. I just love it so much." Xander laughed nervously. "I was worried you wouldn't like it." Nolan rolled his eyes, smiling. "Of course I'd like it. It's perfect." As darkness fell, the fire warmed the porch. They snuggled under blankets, the movie playing on the laptop. Nolan rested his head on Xander's shoulder and kissed the top of it. Xander felt a warmth he hadn't known in years, a pure joy he could finally embrace. He nudged Nolan gently. "Hey." Nolan asked. "I love you, Nolan. Like, really love you." It was the first time Xander had said it since they started dating, and it felt different, powerful, and meaningful. Nolan's face lit up. "Xander, I love you too. I'm so glad we're together." Xander smiled. "You're the only thing that constantly makes me truly happy. And you're the one who always protects me and helps me out," Nolan said. Xander leaned in for a soft kiss. "Okay, enough sappy stuff now. I've known you long enough to know that's fine," Nolan teased. "But just know, I really do love you." Xander grinned. "I love you too, Nolan." They leaned back, content, surrounded by firelight, blankets, and stars, feeling safe and happy in each other's company. Thanks for listening to today's BL story. If it made your heart skip a beat, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Only here on BL Stories, where love knows no limits.